May the 4th be with you, everyone. I'd love to go so much further with this music bit, but I'd rather not wrestle with the mouse. Star Wars was released in 1977, or I guess 1976 if you include the novelization of the first film. And as soon as it was out, marketing was all over it. You had Luke Skywalker action figures, Darth Vader Halloween masks, arcade games, the works. And with how popular D&D was in the 70s and 80s, and with role-playing games delving into wider and wider pools to siphon from, it would only make sense that Star Wars would get its own role-playing game. So for this May the 4th Star Wars Day extravaganza, let's take a gander at the 1987 release of West End Games' Star Wars the Role-Playing Game. This wasn't the first sci-fi tabletop game, of course. As far as I'm aware, that would be Metamorphosis Alpha, which would make for a fun episode to tackle. But this is not about that. In 1987, West End Games would release Star Wars the Role-Playing Game. Glad to see they stuck to a quick and easy-to-remember title. Now, West End Games would not be the only company to make Star Wars RPGs. Fantasy Flight Games made a series of rather fascinating games using unique dice, though they gave players diagrams for using normal D6s, D8s, and D12s. Heck, even Wizards of the Coast, the D&D guys, made a Star Wars game in the early 2000s that used the D20 system. Not this game though. Much like Warhammer, this game used the humble D6 for its dice rolls. Although the book does say it doesn't come with any dice, but you can, quote, cannibalize some from other games, or buy some, end quote. I know that cannibalize is a perfectly normal thing to say about using things from different things in your own game, but that still feels like a bit of a drastic word to say. Why have I not used the term pilfer? This book's introduction also lets us know that while this book has everything an enterprising Star Wars role player may need, there would be other supplements coming. Also, by the way, this bit sounds a little bit different audio-wise because this is editing me, and yes, I am aware that the audio in this sounds a little bit rough. I don't know why it happened, but the audio got jacked up in the middle of it. Okay, back to the regularly scheduled video. Including an ever-important Star Wars sourcebook, which would give info on ships, equipment, and aliens. This video will not focus on that book. Maybe another time. Now, I'll go through a few things that this book does include, such as, importantly, character creation and how the game actually works. First, character creation, for which I'll, of course, use the character sheet found at the rear of the rulebook. I don't know if there are any first edition West End Games Star Wars RPG character sheet filling websites, but I opted to do it the classic way of pen and paper. Right, so what's the first thing we need to choose for our character? A template. We need to select a template. But what's a template? There are 24 templates printed on pages 123 through 138. Each describes a character who fits the Star Wars universe. It provides basic game information for the character, the numbers you use when the character does something in the game, as well as background material to tell you about the character's motives, what he or she is like, and how he or she reacts to other characters. So the template is essentially your character's class, with some templates also influencing your species. Let's quickly check through them. We have the armchair historian, don't remember seeing that in the films, the arrogant noble, the alien student of the Force, Ewok, brash pilot, bounty hunter, kid, because who doesn't want to play a child shouting, "Now this is pod racing," 10 or so years before that film, gambler, failed Jedi, the merc, the loyal retainer, the laconic scout, the old senatorial, the Mon Calamari, the minor Jedi, the quixotic Jedi, the pirate, the outlaw, the tongue-tied engineer, the smuggler, the retired imperial captain, the tough native, the Wookiee, and the young senatorial. I'm going to opt for the failed Jedi because you know my clownish ass was once a Jedi who's fallen on hard times. I also suspect some of these classes were based on a few of the expanded universe stories, like, say, Alien Student of the Force, might represent some of the characters from the Dark Empire comics. Being a failed Jedi gives me 2D for my technical and mechanical, 2D plus 2 to my dexterity and strength, and 3D plus 1 to my perception and knowledge. Those codes simply mean how many dice you roll and what modifiers you add to the dice roll. 3d plus 1 means you roll 3 dice and add 1 to your result. Your attributes are decided when you choose your archetype, but you get to pick your own skills. Skills start the same as their governing attribute, and you get 7d to allocate to skills. You can't add more than 2 dice to a skill from baseline. For my failed Jedi, I'm giving her 2 to melee attack and 1 to melee parry and dodge, and 1 each to climbing/jumping, stamina, and hide/sneak. They also start with 1 force point and 1d in control and sense. Their starting gear is 250 credits, a bottle of rotgut, set of robes, and a lightsaber. You can give your guy some character connections, but I'm opting out of that since this is just for me. Technically, my character should have a student. That's basically her renewed purpose in life. And I've not got any other characters. But yeah, here's a character. Mazu the, let's say Cathar failed Jedi. But she doesn't have any dark side points. Why is that? I mean, didn't her sheet mention the call of the dark side? Well, yes, but dark side is its own thing in this game. I'll explain later. After this segment, you're given a quick explainer on how the game works, how skill checks are done, whether you use your attribute pool or your skill pool, difficulty numbers, opposing rolls, combat, and the Force. The Force in this game is actually rather unique, as players can tell the GM that they're trusting in the Force, meaning an occurrence of luck, moxie, or control suddenly causes things to go your way. You can only do this as many times as you have Force points. As everyone has 1 at the start of the game, each player can only do this once. However, using Force abilities does not require any use of Force points, but there is something you must adhere to. There is no emotion. There is peace. There is no ignorance. There is knowledge. There is no passion. There is serenity. There is no chaos. There is harmony. There is no death. There is the Force. This is the Jedi Code, and all Jedi must follow this. I mean, it's not the Jedi Code in this book, but all Jedi must still live by the one in this book too. In this, the code is as such. You may not kill, except in self-defense or the defense of others. You may not act for personal gain or wealth or power. You must never act from hatred, anger, fear, or aggression. Okay, yeah, no, the actual Jedi Code is in here too. Sorry, I lied to you again. Whoops! All Force users must adhere to this code, lest they fall to the dark side. Every time a Force user uses the Force in a way that breaks this code, they take a dark side point. Now note this, using a lightsaber also counts as a Force skill, and it gets its dice pool from your control Force skill. If you get your second dark side point, you will need to start rolling a d6. If you roll under your dark side points level, so for example, if you got 3 points, you'd roll a 1 or a 2, your character has fallen to the dark side, and that character's player must hand their sheet to the GM. It's like dying, except your character can show up to try and kill the party. Something I neglected to mention in the script here, but there is actually a mechanical use for the dark side points too. When you take a dark side point, that dark side point is then correlated to an added 1d to your Force abilities. So there are benefits to it, but one could say the negatives outweigh the benefits. It's a quick and easy path, but quick and easy is the ruin it brings as well. After this introduction, we're given a solo roleplay scenario. It's honestly more like one of those fighting fantasy books that Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson made. Do they still make those? I might actually play this at a later date, if there is enough interest in this sort of thing. Following this is a section for the GM, or Games Master. You're given your main roles, acting as a referee, playing the NPCs, maintaining the suspension of disbelief, setting the tone, and relaxing. You're also given 8 useful things to remember about game mastering. 1. You can't learn everything at once. 2. Understand the rules and talk them over with the players. If they ask you to describe something, do. Let them worry about whether or not something you describe is important. 3. Expect to extend the rules. 4. Expect to be wrong sometimes. 5. Be fair. 6. Be impartial. 7. Be prepared. 8. Be entertaining. These are all really useful things to put into any role-playing game book these days too. I mean, the core of the role-playing game is for it to be fun, so, get to putting these little pointers in your role-playing game books, everybody. The GM is then given the same explanation for attributes and skills, with a little more in-depth explanations for when to use what skill or attribute, which is rather useful to know when you have a skill called Technology and the attributes Mechanical and Technical. And then in the middle there's this picture of a frog dog and a short bit where a failed Jedi explains to the GM that booze is enough of a necessity for them that they can use a survival check to look for liquor. You also get a full section for combat with a few fairly granular rules, but with it being a role-playing game, that is kind of to be expected. You want more granularity for your more detailed scenarios, rather than an Imperial invasion force striking at a rebel base on Hoth. Speaking of, why isn't there an epic-scale Star Wars tabletop game yet? Wouldn't that be cool? ATTs on the tabletop, and MTTs, and AT-ATs, and... well, the Rebels don't really have much for that, do they? Well, I guess that's the reason, huh? We are given rules for healing injuries and wounds using med packs, rejuvenation tanks, could be Bacta, could be Kolto, or naturally by resting. But of course, this is Star Wars, so there has to be rules for starships, right? Correct! There's an entire chapter for discussing starships, be it simply booking passage on a starliner, getting on a smuggling ship, or jumping into the cockpit of an X-Wing, or escaping a Star Destroyer aboard a TIE Fighter. The primary skill for piloting a starship is astrogation. You also get rules for starship combat here, mostly focusing on dogfights involving freighters or shuttles at best, no capital ships. The skills in spaceship combat are piloting, gunnery, and shields, each found under mechanical. This combat sequence is split between the piloting segment, where each crew member announces their plans for the combat round, the speed segment, where the dice are rolled to determine the speed of the ships, and whether the ships close up or are able to lose the enemy a bit, the first fire segment, where the gunners roll to hit enemy ships, pilots roll to evade a shot, and shields operators roll to disperse shots. The final segment is the second and subsequent fire segments, where those gunners who have chosen to fire more than once may attack again. After this we get the force segment. We went into this a little bit, but it's important, I think, to make a note of the 3 force skills you get. Control, allowing you to maintain control and balance over your own body. Sense, allowing you to feel the force around you and see and feel what others could not. And Alter, allowing you to affect the world around you. You can also mix these powers, like mixing control and sense to see the future or send out your thoughts to someone's mind, or mixing alter and control to ease, or for the darkly inclined, amplify another's pain. Indeed, there are 2 powers that require the combination of control, sense, and alter to use. Perfect Mind, the "these aren't the droids you're looking for" mind trick, and Telekinetic Kill, which automatically confers a dark side point upon an attempt of the skill. After a quick segment about the other characters in the campaign, stock characters and droids, we are brought into the Adventures section, which gives advice for running adventures, a few scenario ideas, and an entire RP scenario, a rebel breakout. But other than that, we come to the end of this tale. Since this is a Star Wars special episode, will I be replacing the Final Liberation music with something Star Warsy? No. Star Wars role-playing has come a long way. There are functionally 4 ways to play Star Wars role-playing games. The Western Games Systems, the last sourcebook for which came out to add things shown in the animated series Star Wars Rebels, at least the first season. The Wizards of the Coast D20 system, the Fantasy Flight Game systems like Edge of the Empire, and a fan-made Star Wars 5e, which adapts D&D rules to fit into a Star Wars setting, possibly in a similar way to how Knights of the Old Republic adapted 3.5e D&D rules to make up its system. And of course, that's not all you get if you want to play Star Wars on the tabletop. With the still regularly updated skirmish game Star Wars Shatterpoint and war game Star Wars Legion, letting you lead your forces to hold back the hordes of the dark side or to crush the feeble defenders of the light side. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far and liked the video, then why not show it with a cheeky little like, and maybe by telling me what your favorite Star Wars media is. I really love the Knights of the Old Republic games, and both Andor and Rogue One are some of my favorite Star Wars shows or films. I had plans for another video originally, but then it turned out that today is May the 4th, so... I had to do something. Maybe next year I'll talk about the first Star Wars war game. Anywho, thank you for watching, may the Force be with you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!